ordered 2 of their best dishes. Haru was a bit uncomfortable about this, as she didn't think it was okay for him to order such expensive food for her, but he teasingly told her that she's gonna get it tonight. No, he didn't tell her this. He teasingly told her that they couldn't go to the maze with an empty stomach, adding that he wanted to fill her stomach up with the best food possible, bros. What's wrong with you? Why are you getting these hentai thoughts? Anyways, she started blushing hearing this and seeing how much he cared for her. And when they finished with their food, Ichinosuke asked Haru if she came from wealthy family, and she told him that she came from a mid-class family. And when our protagonist asked her about the reason she became a slave, he then withdrew the question, telling her that he crossed the line and that he shouldn't ask her something that she felt uncomfortable with. Ichinosuke then said that no matter the reason she became a slave, he wouldn't hate her for it. Haru thought that that was sweet of him, as she blushed even more and told him that she would definitely tell him why she became a slave when the right time came. Sometimes later, they went to an item shop to buy something they might need for the maze, and the first thing that came to Ichinosuke's mind was a storage bag for Haru, as he already had one, and as he looked around, he saw that the storage bag that he already had was actually a rare item that not everyone could have, and he felt gratitude to Daijiro, the guy that left him that diary that he got all the useful information from. Haru reminded our protagonist that they also needed to get some food for their journey, as they would get hungry along the way. At this point, Ichinosuke was interested about the types of mazes there were, and then we learned that alongside the beginner one, there were also intermediate and high rank maze, and even though she thought that intermediate maze would be good for them, she still thought that our protagonist should first finish the beginner one, because he would get a reward after beating the final boss on the 10th floor. Ichinosuke thought this sounded great, and then he agreed that he would then do the beginner maze first, especially after hearing that Haru herself finished that maze before. Haru also taught our protagonist how he could check other people's complete statuses, and as long as they agreed, he just had to say their name, adding open status. When he checked her Windows status, he found it interesting that one of the jobs she had was a beast swordsman, and so he asked her about it, and she told him that even though there were many benefits of that, she couldn't freely choose that, as only the immortal lordess could do it. Bros, my neighbor just started chopping woods with a chainsaw, however you say it, sawing woods. Do you hear the noise? If you don't hear the noise in a moment, that's because I chainsawed him. I turned him into a chainsaw man. Anyways, let's go back to the story. Then as he was messing about with his Windows status, he managed to change her job to that of a beast swordsman, and he was surprised at how easy it was, since she was telling him that it was basically impossible to change a job. He then asked her if she wanted to get her job changed to the beast swordsman, adding that she should promise him that she wouldn't scream too loud. At this point, they were both smiling at each other, but for different reasons, as she was smiling because she had no clue what was going on and why Ichinosuke was smiling like then. And then she realized that her job got switched, and she was utterly shocked, as that was impossible, and our protagonist, a little embarrassed, told her that she should consider it as one of his specialties. She then told him that it wasn't just a specialty, as that was impossible and only the immortal lords could do it. Seeing her so excited, he told her that it was better that she kept it for herself, as it might cause some people to get a wrong idea, and this is when we learn that basically Ichinosuke could trick the system by constantly changing his jobs, and he would go unnoticed. He then told Haru that there were a lot more things about him that he didn't tell her, and that he might tell her once they were in the maze, and this left her puzzled. A bit later, we see that they were already in the maze, and our protagonist was battling the wolves, cutting them left, right, and center. After they finished with that level, they moved to the next one, where the goblins were, and thanks to Haru's party leader and experience setting, he could share his experience with her without getting her in danger. But during that whole time, our protagonist felt that there was something something off about Haru, and so he asked her if everything was okay, and she told him that she was worrying about two issues. The first one being Ichinosuke's slashing ability being so unique and good, and the second, the fact that she was already at level 12 of Beast Swordsman and she only defeated like 4 demons. And as soon as she said this, our protagonist knew that it was time for him to tell her what was going on, and so he told her about the divine blessing he received. We also learn here from Haru that they actually call those people from other worlds wanderers. And surprisingly, Haru didn't feel uncomfortable or anything about this at all, but as a matter of fact, she was actually proud that our protagonist trusted her that much to tell her this story, and Ichinosuke was just melting from this overwhelming sweetness. Our protagonist then got close to her ears and proudly whispered to her that he actually had 2 of those blessings, and this left her flabbergasted. After he explained to her how those blessings worked, she then told him that he was like that hero that managed to defeat the Demon King 12 years ago, and that guy also was from Japan, just like Ichinosuke, adding that his name was Daijiro. And this made our protagonist realize that Daijiro was actually such an incredible person, even more so than he initially thought. We get to learn a little bit more about Daijiro as we learn that 200 years ago there was a great war fought between demon race led by demon lord Familist Larity and the human race led by the church Raikant. And only 12 years ago there were 4 great heroes of this world who fought against the demon lord and actually defeated him, and one of these 4 great heroes was a monk whose name was Daijiro. I just love saying this word, Daijiro. Anyways, we see our protagonist being grateful to Daijiro, and as he was being grateful and thinking about Daijiro, a huge monster started attacking them, and Haru got scared for our protagonist, yelling at him to be more careful, but he just casually told her that she doesn't need to worry as he looked up and saw a slime monster on the hill. And we learn why she doesn't need to worry, as the slime monster was approaching them at the speed of a person in the wheelchair, as 2 of them were waiting for it to come, and with a quick slash our protagonist sliced it in half, or did he? As he finished his attack, he saw that the slime was still in one piece, and then he realized that this slime is stronger than goblins, and Haru told him that physical attacks usually don't work as effective versus slimes. You know, like in Pokemon, fire isn't weak against water, but it is weak against grass. Like that, something like that. And as they were spectating the slime, it jumped up in the air, but it didn't jump up very quickly as it fell down immediately. And as it was slowly wiggling towards them, Haru explained that these slimes have bodies made of the material that can destroy even metal slowly, so the best way to attack it would be to use the slash from the distance over and over again and not to touch it directly, otherwise your skin might get burned. And that's how Ichinosuke decides to defeat the slime, as he uses slash, waits 10 seconds for the cooldown, uses slash again, waits 10 seconds, uses slash again, and over like that for a couple more minutes. And after defeating the slime, he levels up and unlocks fire magic, and as he realizes that he now unlocked fire magic, he gets absolutely thrilled. And this fire magic is so cool that even my dogs got excited and started barking for it. Haru was however confused looking at him like this and asked him what's happening, to which he answers how it's nothing because he feels kinda awkward for acting like a nerd all of a sudden, while he thinks that even though he did migrate to another world, he didn't expect it to have magic, let alone for him to learn it so quickly. So he then tries to use this spell that he learned, as we see him casting Fireball, and the entire maze lights up from the spell, and with it Haru's face as well, as she gets absolutely astonished seeing him use the Fireball spell. And just as he used it, after finishing the cast, he gets a notification letting him know that he leveled up again, and he realizes that when he uses certain spells, he gains experience for using them, and this way levels them up. Haru is absolutely amazed with her master, as she approached him and asked him if that was magic, and he kinda awkwardly told her that he thought fire magic would be more effective versus slimes, instead of using his steel sword and fighting them for almost 10 minutes, which is like extremely boring. Haru then approaches him closer, asking him if he's a magic swordsman because he uses both swords and magic, and he says, I guess not. I mean, I don't know, why would you say no, because you did actually use both swords and magic, but Haru explains to him that if he can use both, he should be a magic swordsman, and he gets all awkward again, telling her that maybe it's something similar, but that his job isn't exactly magic swordsman, while he thinks to himself that he doesn't actually have a job, but he can't tell her that yet. He then asks Haru whether it's forbidden to use magic in arena, and she tells him that it isn't forbidden, but that the audience might not like it, and Ichinosuke comments how he doesn't care, then it's okay to use magic. And Haru then explains how there isn't a lot of magicians in this town, because in order to be a magician you need to have a lot of money, because when you use spells you use your MP to cast them, and the best way to recover MP is by buying potions that refill MP, but the problem is that they cost awfully lot of money. As she explains that only chemists can craft these potions, so you basically need to be Walter White, plus you need to be a really high level chemist to make these potions. And she also lets our protagonist know the difference between chemists and alchemists in this world, where alchemists create alloys from minerals or metals, and chemists actually create potions from ingredients like plants, seeds, animal parts, etc. And in order to become an alchemist, you need to be apprentice mage level 10 and apprentice alchemist level 20 to unlock. And for chemist, you need to be farmer level 15 and harvester level 10 to unlock. And we see our protagonist kinda understanding how these professions work in this world. And while they were talking, they suddenly notice a slime coming behind the wall, as our protagonist gets a really scary Shirigami face and comments how it's time for him to practice his fireball spell against this slime. And just as the slime appears in front of them, Haru gets surprised because this isn't a regular slime, but a shiny slime. However, our protagonist was bloodthirsty and didn't even notice this, as he extended his hand and yelled fireball, and as it hit the slime, Haru yells out, telling him that this slime is a rare monster, and we see that it dropped a medal, and Haru is extremely excited while she's showing this medal to Ichinosuke, and he doesn't understand what's the big fuss about it, as she explains to him how this medal from rare monsters is known as rare medal. Wow, what a unique name. And magic users use these medals to feed their magic beasts and level them up that way. And Ichinosuke doesn't think it's very useful since he doesn't have any magical beasts, but Haru then explains how, since it's so rare, it can be sold for a really high price, and this gets our protagonist excited as he tells her that they should find more of these slimes and hunt them down. And just a couple of moments later, we see our protagonist flipping every single rock around them to try to find this slime, but after flipping the entire part of this maze upside down, he gets disappointed because he didn't find any. And Haru tries to cheer him up by telling him that because they are on the beginner level of the maze, there isn't a lot of monsters here, and that usually adventurers skip the entire part of the maze and go straight for the boss. And how conveniently that just then, to explain the situation further, we see two adventurers passing by trying to find the boss and kill him to gain more levels and experience. How convenient. Ichinosuke then comments how two of them should also fight the boss, and Haru tells him that they should wait a little bit for the boss to respawn, because these two adventurers that just passed them might have already killed it. And a couple of moments later, we see our protagonist and Haru standing in front of the boss entrance room, and the door is closed, which means that the boss has been defeated and he isn't in the room right now, and they have to wait for him to respawn. And while they're waiting, Haru explains how the boss on this level of the maze is the Goblin King, and his power is that even if you chop him up completely, he can appear again. But she says that if our protagonist has difficulties defeating this boss, she can single-handedly take him out, as our protagonist tells her that if something goes wrong, he's counting on her, and she yells in confidence, saying how he should just leave it to her. And suddenly, they hear a rumbling sound. Rumbling, as our protagonist realizes that it's his stomach rumbling because he's really hungry, and he tells Haru that while they're waiting, two of them should eat some food, and Haru kinda shyly asks Ichinosuke if it's okay that she eats the same food that he's eating right now, and first he kinda gets disappointed and then yells out saying how it's perfectly fine for her to eat anything he does as well. And this makes her absolutely blush as she's looking at the dried meat Haru served, and after taking a bite she comments how this meat is very delicious. And as our protagonist tries to bite it, he realizes that it's actually very, very chewy and hard for him to eat. Plus, the alcohol smell of it is too disgusting for him too. But after seeing Haru enjoy it so much, he offers her to try his meat. the meat that he's eating, but she comments how she doesn't dare take his share of food, and after seeing her tail wag like a little happy puppy and her face blush completely, he tells her how it's okay for her to eat it because it's too hard for him, and now her face gets completely red as she comments that if this is his order, she will gladly do it as she starts nibbling on his meat, and he calls her cute while she's doing so, and this makes her blush even more as she thanks our protagonist, and her ears wiggle a little bit. And seeing her ears wiggle like that, Ichinosuke then asks her if it's okay for the white wolves if other people touch their hair or tail, and she gets dead serious, saying that besides their recognized masters, no one else is allowed to touch either their hair, their tail, or belly, and our protagonist apologizes for asking these random questions, and then she gets shy again, telling him that he is her recognized master, so it would be an honor for her if he would touch her. And she starts blushing even more and telling him that he can do whatever he wants with her, and this leaves our protagonist also blushing like a little girl. And my bro actually decides to start touching her body, and we see her feeling all sorts of sensations while he's doing it, and she kinda pulls back saying, no, it's not this, and he apologizes immediately, and Haru lets him know how it's not a problem and he doesn't need to apologize. But this is her first time getting touched by anyone else than her parents. What? You're saying your parents touched you like this as well? What? What? I mean, you could say it's not a problem. Your parents always hug you, you know, kiss you, touch you. But she's saying nobody touched me like this before, besides her parents. This is a little bit too much for me. Let's see which direction this is gonna head to. So our protagonist then approaches her and touches her ears, and she falls in his arms, in his embrace, and he asks her if she's fine, what's wrong, and she lets you know how there's nothing wrong, how she just felt overwhelmed, and she begs him to touch her more. What? And as our protagonist is completely frozen out of shyness, she extends her body a little bit, showing him her belly and asking if it would be okay if he would rub her belly right now, and his face is absolutely red. And I think both Ichinosuke, Haru, you, even me, we all forgot why they were here in the first place, to defeat the Goblin King, the boss of the first level maze, not to touch each other. So let's see what's gonna happen here. She approaches him, saying that being rubbed in the belly is considered to be the most trustworthy thing to white wolves, and our protagonist still can't move. So he asks her if it's really okay for him to touch her belly, and she says that it would be her honor if he would do so. As we see her in this, I don't know, she's lying down on his lap. I can't, bros. What's going on with this manga? I don't know. I thought it's a normal manga. I guess this is the last part of it if it continues going into this direction, because I don't want to get demonetized, you know? So he actually starts rubbing her belly, and as he's rubbing her belly, she tells him to put it a little higher. And bros, I can't do this. What's going on? He looks at her body to see what the higher part of her body is, and it's her up high, and he gets absolutely frozen in shyness again, asking her if she's really certain she would like him to do that. But she doesn't respond, and as he looks at her face, he sees that she kinda looks tired, and then he realizes something, that she is drunk from the dried meat that she ate because it had alcohol in it. So he laid her back down and not in his lap anymore, and adjusted her clothes so he doesn't turn out to be a pervert. My boy almost got caught in 4K is all I'm gonna say. Anyways, let's go back to the normal story and me not being afraid of this becoming, you know, HENTAI. Ha! Anyways, a little bit more time passes, and Haru suddenly wakes up, and Ichinosuke lets her know that the goblin boss has probably spawned because the door for his room are open now, but that he can't attack the boss from the distance because there seems to be an invisible wall which would probably block his ranged attacks, and magic projectiles. And Haru lets him know that he is right about this, and we see Ichinosuke feeling relief because Haru doesn't seem to remember what happened just before she passed out. Bros, I can't stress this enough. I'm getting bored of saying it, but I'm sorry for the background noise of dogs barking. I can't control them. They're not hungry, they're not bored. I take them for walks, I feed them a really high quality food. They're barking because there's a lot of people walking dogs besides my house, and when they see those dogs, they start barking at them. I don't know how to train them not to bark at the dogs being walked outside. If you know what could be a solution, please tell me. I'm so sorry about the dogs barking in the background one more time. Let's go back to the story. Haru explains that they have to go in the room to defeat the boss, and actually when they enter, the door will close, and it will stay closed either until they die or they defeat the Goblin King. And Ichinosuke then gets all excited, telling her that it's about time for them to go inside and defeat the Goblin King. And after a long fight, we see them slicing up all the henchmen of the Goblin King and even cutting his head clean off. And by doing so, he leveled up and he increased a lot of his skills as well to the next level. And we see that he unlocked apprentice alchemist job and a fighter job, but he realizes that he's still jobless and it's really hard to raise skills while he's jobless. And while he's spectating his status window, Haru approaches and lets him know all excitedly that her beast swordsman skill is now level 3. And she lets our protagonist know that if it wasn't for him, it would take her way longer to reach this level, and he gets kinda uncomfortable as he knows that it's not thanks to him, but because two lordesses messed up and gave him the crazy experience boost. They then notice a sword lying down on the floor that dropped from the Goblin King, and Haru tells our protagonist how this sword is also a rare item drop, and she comments how they're extremely lucky to get so many rare drops. And it's rare because it has the ability to control goblins and they have to obey you while you're wielding the sword. And our protagonist says that even though they won't encounter any goblins soon, probably, he still will take the sword with him. Haru then tells Ichinosuke that they should go to the inner chamber to pray to the statue of the lordess of this world, because that way he will get the completion reward that he needs to get after defeating the Demon King. And after going to the inner chamber, our protagonist gets absolutely surprised as he sees the statue of this immortal lordess, and it's actually the first lady that he saw after dying, as he can't believe that this is actually her. And he lets Haru know how this is the one that gave him times 20 experience boost, and he then asks Haru if there is a statue of another immortal lordess that kinda looks like a child, and Haru explains how there are two statues that look like a child, saying that one of the two is actually the lordess of positivity and gambling. And it kinda makes sense to Ichinosuke now why she messed up and gave him even more experience boost. He then kneels down in front of this statue and starts praying, and as he does, he feels the statue move, and when he looks up, it actually is the lordess he saw the first time, as she comments how it's been a long time for them to talk. And as our protagonist starts greeting her, he almost calls her an orc, making her absolutely furious. And he thinks she's furious because they gave him the double experience bonus, and he asks her if that's a problem, to which she surprisingly replies how she let it slide, but that his jobless title might be a problem. Ichinosuke doesn't understand why, as he lets her know how he really likes the jobless skill, but she tells him how it's nice for him to like it, but that this kind of skill shouldn't exist at all, because being able to switch jobs as he's doing right now shouldn't be possible without the intervention from the divine lords. And she says how this skill is more powerful than the experience blessing that they gave him, and she compares this skill to hacking, like he's hacking real life, and she says how he will get punished for it if he lets anybody else know about his jobless title. Ichinosuke then, all scared, tells her how he already told some people that he can trust, and he asks her if this is a problem, and she comments how she will look over it for now, but if he continues bragging to other people about the abilities he got from being jobless, she will. And before she finishes her sentence, Ichinosuke comments how nobody will ever know about it. This immortal lady then calms down, saying how in that case it should be fine, and letting him know that it's time for him to get the reward for finishing and killing the Goblin King of this first maze level, and he feels grateful for it, And in the next scene, we see her showing him a wheel with 3 different types of rewards, and their names are skill, weapon, and scourer. And she explains how he needs to throw the dart he's holding in his hand, and the one he lands it on will be his reward, as our protagonist can't understand for the life of him why is a scourer a reward. We see that our protagonist landed the dart on a skill section, and he obtained a skill called Common Language Comprehension, which, as the name suggests, allows him to learn, write and read the most common language of this world, and Ichinosuke finds this skill rather convenient. However, Chubby Lady tells him that this is not a really good reward since he could learn this language anyways through a little bit of a hard work, but our protagonist doesn't want to do it, so he really appreciates unlocking it this way. And before this Lordess leaves, she tells our protagonist to explore more labyrinths, as he can unlock even greater skills and rewards after completing it, and she instructs him to go to a town called Bellasura, and over there's a Torelulu's labyrinth, which is the other immortal Lordess that made a mistake and gave our protagonist the crazy XP bonus. But before she leaves, our protagonist actually asks her about his little sister because she was left behind alone in the previous world where he used to live, which is basically our world. And she told him that she doesn't know a lot about her now, but before they talk next time, she's gonna check up on her and let our protagonist know how she's doing. And with a sad facial expression after she leaves, she thinks how Ichinosuke shouldn't have a little sister. Now we go back to our protagonist, and he sees Haru after getting the reward, and she's all happy and jolly saying, "Oh, congratulations, master!" And he's left confused because he doesn't understand what is she congratulating him for. And she then explains that since the item didn't drop, he must have unlocked a skill as a reward for defeating the Goblin King, saying that his dart almost landed on a scourer, which is like a shower brush, and getting that as a reward for defeating Goblin King, I don't know, bros, it doesn't sound too exciting. He tells Haru how the skill he unlocked is knowledge of common language, so from now on he won't need her translating everything for him because from now on he knows the language. And she comments kinda happy, kinda concerned, saying, "Looks like my jobs have decreased." But then suddenly she starts apologizing and frantically yelling how she didn't mean that Ichinosuke obtaining this skill is a bad thing. And while she's apologizing, Ichinosuke tells her there's nothing to worry about because he is from another world after all, so he's gonna need her help anyways. And she then again frantically starts yelling, saying how she'll do her best to be his servant. After getting back home, Meganet, bros, I just realized I've been saying his name wrong the entire time. His name is actually Margaret, and I've been saying Meganet. I've misread it every time, like for 20 million times. I'm sorry. From now on, we'll just call him Maganet because we're all used to that name. So Maganet tells our protagonist and Haru to change their clothes and get ready for dinner because dinner is almost served. And Ichinosuke realizes how besides the clothes he's wearing on himself right now, he doesn't have any, as he looks over to Haru and asks her if she has any other clothes. And besides the slave scraps she has on her, she also has nothing else. So Ichinosuke asks Maganet to sell them some clothes as soon as possible. Maganet drags Haru away, saying how he has perfect clothes for her, and Ichinosuke lets him know that he wants Haru to pick clothes for him. And after a bit of time passes, we see Haru coming back with Maganet in her new, really adorable little outfit. Ichinosuke then tells Solon that he's planning to go to a town called Velasura with Haru soon, and Solon explains how there's a horse carriage for that town leaving tomorrow from their town they're in right now, and if he misses it tomorrow, he's gonna have to wait 7 days for the next one. And she also explains that he can go on foot, but it will take 3 days for them to reach the Velasura town on foot. So Ichinosuke says how they have no choice but leave tomorrow. And Haru tells Ichinosuke how she'll always follow him no matter where he goes, and Maganet comments how he'll feel sad after they are gone, but how every parent needs to see their child grow up and leave their house. My bro is kinda weird, and I'm not talking about wearing women's clothes. And Maganet then tells Ichinosuke how it's okay with him if Ichinosuke thinks of him as his mother, as Ichinosuke, now in a cold sweat, answers how he thinks of Maganet as a nice older bro sister. And we see Maganet trying to kiss goodbye Ichinosuke, but he isn't too pleased about it. And as Ichinosuke is getting ready to sleep in his room, we see Haru actually coming over, apologizing and saying she would like to talk with him about the thing that happened before Labyrinth's boss? Do you bros remember the thing? I bet you do. Anyways, Haru tells Ichinosuke how she really loved him rubbing her stomach, but how she lost consciousness the last time, so she'd like him to continue doing it right now, right here in this room. And this completely surprises our protagonist, so much so that we see him getting Hanajigaderu Hodoi. I told in one of my previous videos, a couple of months ago, it was a long time ago, what does Hanajigaderu Hodoi mean? If you remember, if you're an OG bro, let me know that in the comments below. And as Ichinosuke is losing his mind about thinking of touching her again, he comments in a shaky voice saying, you only want me to touch your stomach, right? And she lets him know how yes, and also lets him know how on the night of a full moon, white wolves can't get pregnant. So there's no problem, and our protagonist now goes into utter shock out of all the shyness he's feeling right now. He doesn't even believe this is reality. And honestly, bros, neither do I, because if anybody ever told me that at some point in my life I might be recapping hentai manga, I don't know, bro. I don't know how I would feel about that. And I'll just blur this entire panel here because I'll be as vague as possible. We see them, you know, spending the night together under a same blanket. And the next morning, we see Maganet and Solun greeting both our protagonist and Haru as Maganet approaches him and tells him how his house has really thin walls, so he's quite aware of what was going on last night. And this leaves our protagonist and Haru both utterly embarrassed as they've realized Maganet heard everything. Maganet then explains how a girl shouldn't make those sounds, so Ichinosuke should be more of a gentleman, and he starts apologizing, saying how this was his first time, so he wasn't aware of the right actions, so to say, as Haru starts saying how she was perfectly fine. There is no need to change anything because Maganet wanted to teach Ichinosuke a couple of tricks. We see Solon telling Maganet as well how he doesn't need to explain stuff to Ichinosuke because he and Haru need to figure out this stuff together, and she comments how if he didn't have Haru, even she could, and Maganet just interrupts her saying, "Oh my, ha ha ha." Now a bit more time passes and we stop with these embarrassing conversations as Maganet asks Ichinosuke what's his plan for today, and he lets him know that he's planning to complete the intermediate labyrinth and then go to the Adventurers Guild to sell all the loot he gets from the labyrinth. And Maganet comes close to Ichinosuke again and tells him in kinda threatening voice that he shouldn't do anything crazy because Haru is still with him. And as they're dressing in their adventurer's gear, Ichinosuke asks Haru whether she is ready to leave or not, and she comments how she is ready, and then he jealously comments on her skirt being too short, so it makes people easier to see her underwear, and he asks her if she's okay with that, and this leaves her utterly shocked and confused and kinda embarrassed as she doesn't know what to say. So Ichinosuke then starts apologizing, saying that he didn't mean anything weird, but how since she is strong, other strong adventurers might find it weird. Yeah, bro. Of course, you aren't jealous, you're just concerned that other adventurers might look at her underwear. Yeah, sure, nothing jealous about that at all. But Haru happily responds how it's not a problem as she lifts her skirt up and says how she's wearing bloomers. As she turns around, showing Ichinosuke the backside of it too, and commenting how it has a tiny little hole for her tail to go through, and we see Ichinosuke absolutely red in the face, actually being a proper gentleman, saying, "Thanks for the fine view, young lady." This is a Giga Chad move, bros. Look, it's a definite turn on. If you've never had these kinds of experiences with the girls before, when you first have it, after she shows you her up eye or her, you know, backside, so to say, just tell her, "Thank you for the fine view," and leave. Giga Chad based. Anyways, back to the story. After a bit more time passes, we see Haru and Ichinosuke waiting in a line in front of the entrance to the intermediate labyrinth, and Ichinosuke is kinda disappointed that they have to wait for so long because there's so many adventurers in front of them in the line. And Haru tells him how there's a lot of adventurers who beat the beginner maze and head out straight to the intermediate one, like 2 of them, but she also says how there's only around 10% of the adventurers to actually reach the boss room, because the interior of this intermediate labyrinth is so deep and there are teleporters everywhere. And then she explains how these teleporters aren't a bad thing, but actually like a checkpoint. When you reach the highest floor that you've reached, you can use a teleporter to skip all the previous floors, and she lets Ichinosuke know how the highest floor she's ever reached is the 22nd floor. So now when she enters this labyrinth, she can use the teleporter to skip the first 21 floors and go to the 22nd floor immediately. And while two of them were talking, they got interrupted by two other people who called for them, calling them rookies and asking if they're here to do the intermediate level maze, and saying that they should party up and go in together. And Ichinosuke doesn't look too amused with them doing so, as he asks Haru if it's okay if they skip the line and join the two of them in the front of the line. And Haru says, oh yeah, people don't like when others do it, but they often do that as well. And these two people, the boy and the girl that called for them, just raise their voices saying, yeah, let's go in together, let's go, we're friends, it's okay to cut line if we are friends, leaving the rest of the people waiting in a line not too happy about that. And as they got closer, they realized it's the two guys from the maze previously, and Ichinosuke asks them if they're not mad because he defeated the boss they were supposed to defeat, to which they answered how they don't mind the small details, they don't have any grudges against him, they should be friends and they should party up to be stronger together. While Ichinosuke comments how it's not a small thing to defeat your boss in front of you. Ichinosuke then kinda reluctantly agrees, asking them on which floor are they going to teleport, as he comments how he needs to be in the Adventurers Guild by the end of the afternoon, and the guy responds how they're going to teleport to the 95th floor and head straight to the boss, leaving Ichinosuke completely surprised and shocked as he asks Haru if it's really okay if people this week go to the 95th floor, to which two of them respond completely yelling but still being kinda happy, saying that they are not weak, as he comments that he is a first class warrior and she says that she is a first class magic beast tamer. And then they strike a pose, you know, like a cool pose, but it's actually a cringy pose, as Haru comments how she doesn't want to talk with them because they're so cringy. Haru then turns towards Ichinosuke and says how this is called entry leeching, and she explains how if you've never done the maze or didn't do the high levels of the maze and you go in with someone who did, for example, the 95th floor like they have, so you enter the 95th floor and quickly leave, you will be treated as you reached it on your own, and in the future you will be able to teleport there. Ichinosuke then wonders if two of them are strong enough to defeat the boss on the 100th floor of the intermediate level labyrinth, and Haru comments how two of them should be able to do it, but if the other two came along with them, they might get hurt or even worse, they might die, which would leave them in a bad spot as well. To which they respond saying that Ichinosuke, Haru and two of them should go to the floor level that's most suitable to their level so they can level up there, and Ichinosuke isn't too happy about it, but he tells them that they can do that so they can level up easier, even saying that he'll fight all the monsters and give them the last hit, and they can last hit the monster, kill it and get the experience, to which they again really happily but really loudly say, no, we don't need a last attack, which leaves Ichinosuke even more disappointed, confused and sad for partying up with them. But they then explain why, as they comment how even if they need to do the last hit alone, they're going to die because intermediate is impossible for them, and Ichinosuke is left completely confused, not understanding what the hell are they talking about the entire time. The girl then reaches in her purse, saying that she's got something for Ichinosuke, and she pulls out a ring with TJ initials on it, and Haru is surprised, saying that that's it, asking them if that's actually a get-along ring, and the way she said this made Ichinosuke feel, you know, kinda fuzzy, as he thinks this is really cute, so he asks her to say it one more time, and she does it confusingly, saying get-along ring, and Ichinosuke thinks this is mega cute. Giga cute. She then explains what's the function of this ring, and she tells Ichinosuke that by wearing this ring, two party leaders can become one party as long as there are less than 6 members combined when the two parties merge together. And she also says how these rings were made by Daijiro-sama, and they are really valuable, so Ichinosuke looks towards two of these guys, yelling at them, asking them if they stole it, to which they respond still really loudly saying, why would you think that? We got it from Daijiro. As they explain that 12 years ago, they actually helped Daijiro navigate through the city nearby. So as a token of his gratitude, he gave them this ring. And Ichinosuke is kinda surprised as he thinks how even these types of people, like two of them, can be useful in certain situations. But Ichinosuke gives in and decides to party up with them through these rings, and after taking the ring, he looks towards Haru and tells her to extend her hand because he's gonna give her the ring because she's gonna be the leecher, entry leecher. And as she does it and places her hand on Ichinosuke's hand, we see Ichinosuke completely blushing, losing his mind over this touch, while Haru is pleasantly smiling at him, but she's confused. Why is he acting like that? He says how ring finger is off limits. Haru doesn't understand why, but it's because they would be engaged, I guess, and we see him putting the ring on her pinky finger. The ring size was also perfect because it uses magic to adjust the size of the wearer's finger. You know, this is actually a really good point, bros. Whenever you play like video games and you loot rings and accessories like that, they're always perfect size and they never explain why. This is probably why. Now we see this party of 4 standing on the teleporter, and before getting teleported, like the receptionist lady or whatever her job is, yells at them that they need to pay the toll to get teleported, and this leaves Ichinosuke surprised as he didn't expect that he'd need to pay for getting teleported. What he didn't expect even more is that besides paying his toll, he's gonna have to pay for the boy as well. We see them teleporting to the 55th floor of the intermediate labyrinth, as the boy comments how there have been some magic beasts called fish lizards, and they have been spawning like crazy on this floor, so they want to go to check it out. And Ichinosuke asks them if they're actually dangerous, to which the boy responds how if the adventurer's level is high, it's not gonna be a problem, and him and the girl then cheer up together as they yell, "But it's gonna be a problem for us," as Ichinosuke comments that this is really surprising. He definitely didn't expect this. And what's even more surprising is that the boy comments how there is a quest put out by the Adventurers Guild to exterminate these lizard fish, and the girl comments how this is a simple quest, you know, F rank quest, if there is like one fish, but if you fight more of them at once, it increases the difficulty level to the D rank. Ichinosuke then asks these guys if they just used him and Haru to help them with the extermination quest, and the boy responds how they didn't plan to do this quest, but they planned to go straight for the boss, but after reaching this floor they remembered that they had this quest. And Ichinosuke then yells at them again, saying that he and Haru won't receive the reward for quest because they didn't accept it in the Adventurers Guild, so this is just going to be a waste of their time. However, Haru interrupts him, telling him that if 2 of these are guild members, then these subjugation quests can be redeemed by anyone, so 2 of them should be fine as well. To which the boy and the girl respond by saying that if they just remove the fish lizard scales and turn them in, it's gonna be fine. And we see Ichinosuke completely, I don't even know what's the right word. His entire body is like the manifestation of a facepalm. This is how he feels, if facepalm was an emotion. He then noticed Haru acting a little bit strange, so he asks her if everything is fine, to which she responds that everything is good, but how they didn't encounter any of these magic beasts so far, so it's rather weird, as she comments how this is not something that happens often in the maze. We see them going down to the 56th floor, and Ichinosuke tells this boy and girl, Kreye boy and girl, that they don't know where the monsters will be exactly, so they should be careful at all times, and 2 of them respond that they're leaving the entire monster grind to Ichinosuke so they don't get in danger. And before Ichinosuke could make another disappointed face, all of them start hearing screams for help, and they quickly turn around and rush towards the voice screaming for help, and they see a giant lizard monster swallowing another adventurer alive, leaving both Haru and Ichinosuke kinda shocked and surprised. However, after eating this adventurer, the monster just turns around and leaves, and Ichinosuke is kinda confused because the monster didn't notice them. But then they hear another scream, and it's from the boy they partied up with earlier, as he yells how he and the girl are surrounded with a lot of small lizard monsters, so they shouldn't be dangerous if fought one-on-one, but there is so many of them. The two of them are frozen in fear and they have no idea what to do now. And we see their names, Eliza and Joffrey, which I completely forgot, so I just kept on calling them the boy and the girl. Haru then quickly yells to Ichinosuke to use his fireball magic because lizards are weak to fire and water. So he starts casting it, yelling out petite fire as he flings the fireball directly at the lizard, completely burning it alive. He then yells to these two guys, Jeffrey and Eliza, that they should go back to the 55th floor, and before he could even finish the sentence, they obediently listened and started running away. Once all of them reached the 55th floor, Ichinosuke says how they're lucky the monsters didn't follow them over here, to which these two completely carelessly respond, "Oh look, our levels have increased," making Ichinosuke's face disappointed yet again. Ichinosuke then turns towards Haru again, asking her about the giant lizard monster that ate the adventurer alive, and she comments how this monster must be a variant, and then explains how these monsters are stronger and they have higher reproductive abilities, so it's likely that they are related to the huge influx of magic beasts. And she also comments how if somebody reported the appearance of this monster to the Adventurers Guild, there might be a subjugation quest for it as well, which probably wields a very hefty reward. And while they were talking, they actually see the lizard climbing up from the 56th floor to the 55th floor, and Haru says how it's good for them to fight them one by one because they can grind experience quickly that way, but if more lizards start swarming the place, they're gonna be in danger. She also explains how if they continue breeding really fast, they might start coming to the 55th floor and using the teleporter as well, leaving the maze and going to the outer world, making normal people who aren't adventurers endangered as well. So Ichinosuke turns towards Eliza and Joffrey and yells at them that they should head back to the Adventurers Guild straight away and report the situation to them. And in the meantime, Ichinosuke and Haru will hold off the lizards. Two of them yet again obediently answer how there's no problem, they're gonna do it, as they run out of the labyrinth, saying how they will notify the Adventurers Guild. Ichinosuke then tells Haru to take off the get-along ring as he explains the strategy they're gonna use to grind experience from these lizards. Basically what they're gonna do is fight near the staircase to the 55th floor, so if the giant massive lizard appears, they can immediately run back up to the 55th floor and not get endangered. And he also lets Haru know how their goal right now is to keep the lizards from exiting the labyrinth and also leveling up to become stronger. Ichinosuke then excitedly yells how it's time for them to grow their levels up, to which Haru wholeheartedly agrees, and we see two of them standing in fear but moving slowly towards the 56th floor. We see the lizards charging in vast numbers at the two of them, and Ichinosuke and Haru are pretty serious about this situation as they are having trouble dealing with these lizards. Their strategy is basically to lure the lizards up to the 55th floor, where they're gonna wait for them upstairs and kill them off one by one because the staircase is too narrow for the whole horde to go together. And we see them running away from a lizard so huge, Haru comments that it's almost a dragon and not a lizard. Now we see two of them at a 55th floor waiting for the lizards, as Ichinosuke is worried that the big one is gonna come, but he hopes it's gonna be too big to climb the stairs. And suddenly Ichinosuke gets a window notification popping up and letting him know that his level has increased, and with it a lot of his skills like swordsman skill, apprentice, magician skill, fighter skill, and job class Magician has also been obtained besides all these skills leveling up. And Ichinosuke is left kinda taken aback by all the levels he gained, because right now he's level 60 as he wonders how many lizards did they defeat, and he thinks it's around approximately 80, but that multiplied with his cheat experience gains is equal to 24,000 lizards worth of experience he's gained, which he finds rather amazing. He turns around towards Haru and asks her if her skills and levels have increased, and she confirms it, saying that her beast swordsmanship level has increased, and right now she's level 6, and thanks to being level 6, she unlocked the skill scent detection strengthening with it. And she continues speaking in a happy manner, saying that her beast swordsman status is growing really fast, so much so that she's almost at the same level as she is with her normal swordsman skill that she's been leveling up her entire life. Ichinosuke is really happy seeing her excited like this, as she explains that her speed right now is on the same level of her swordsman's speed, and she could dodge any attack from the bandits they fought the last time with her beast swordsmanship level now. She then suddenly asks Ichinosuke if he's too tired to fight more, and he responds how he's feeling good enough to fight more, and she happily lets him know that she's probably strong enough for two of them to take the giant lizard, almost dragon monster now. So they nod heads, look at each other in approval as they start walking to the lizards. And as they reach the entrance to the 56th floor, they look down and see whole hordes of lizards gathering together, and Ichinosuke is a little bit concerned about this, but since they are passive and not attacking him, he decides to go in for a first attack, as we see him use his slash ability as he dives into the lizards, cutting them up into pieces. And as he spots a perfect opening, when he lands, he uses his fire spell, Petit Fire, to cause the lizards to boom in flames as they are all burned to crisp. Haru is left pretty surprised and amazed at this spell, as she asks Ichinosuke where did he learn this magic, and he shyly answers how it's just a simple Petit Fire spell, but there's a lot of different factors in it, which made it a little bit stronger right now. He then yells that they should focus on the lizards because more are charging at them, and gives Haru an order that after he jumps up, she should also leap, and she comments how she'll do it without fail, and we see Ichinosuke running towards the lizards at such a speed that it looks like he's almost flying, and he then yells circle slash, basically spin to win, and this is why Haru should jump up, because he's gonna slice everything around him, and she's gonna jump up to avoid the attack, which she perfectly did. But after landing down, we see her trembling in fear as she realized how powerful this attack was, so much so that it took down all the lizards at once, and she realizes that if she didn't jump, she would probably get slashed as well. And now we learn how and why Ichinosuke is so strong, and we learn that he's actually changing his jobs in an instant. So when he wants to use the Petit Fire spell, he changes his job into a magic user class, but when he wants to use his sword, he changes his class into sword wielding class, and this makes him so OP, so much so that this isn't allowed. Actually, it's not allowed. Nobody can actually do it in this world besides him. If somebody wants to change his job or class, he needs to pray to the divine immortal lady to change it for him. But because Ichinosuke can switch between 5 different jobs, he's been doing it this entire fight, and we now know that this is actually a pretty skill intensive activity, as you really need to be skillful enough to do it so quickly. We then see the giant lizard monster, almost dragon, approaching them from the distance, and Haru yells to Ichinosuke to call for his attention, and as he turns around, he can see the giant lizard jumping towards him, slamming down on the ground, seemingly smashing both of them to tiny little pieces. But in the last moment, Ichinosuke managed to dodge the lizard's attack, as he comments how it must have a really big appetite if he wants to eat someone like him, probably implying that he isn't really tasty or sweet. I mean, if you're talking about Haru, I would kindly disagree, but Ichinosuke is probably really yucky. Ichinosuke then starts conjuring a fireball in his hands, as he tells the lizard that he's got something for him to eat, and he yells out Petit Fire and throws the fireball at the lizard, completely leaving Haru shocked at the magnitude of the blast caused by it now, as you see the giant lizard completely engulfed in flames, and just a couple of moments later, its body completely exploded because it swallowed the Petit Fire spell, which exploded from the inside. Basically, it imploded. Ichinosuke even surprised himself right now as he realizes that the level of this fire spell is way beyond just Petit level, and we see Haru behind him, completely mesmerized at the power of the spell her master just cast. She congratulates Ichinosuke and then lets him know that after defeating the huge lizard, the smaller ones ran off in fear, and as they look at the aftermath of their battle, they see so much loot on the ground, so much so that it's gonna be a pain to pick all of it up. I mean, if you're playing some MMOs, you can probably buy a pet either for real life money or in-game currency, and the ability that pet has is to just automatically gather all the loot around you. Ichinosuke is left a little bit disappointed because the monsters ran away, because he was planning to grind them a little bit more to increase his level, but just as he thought about that, he gets a notification that his level has increased and Haru also gained a level up as well. And this kinda makes him feel really bad, as he comments how he felt that his head is going to explode just now because he's getting over leveled almost, and he then opens a status window to see what skills did he learn, and man, bros, I'm sorry, just pause the video right here and read all the skills. It's too much for me to read every single one of them. But two notable ones that he's obtained is Mania and Skill Sort. And as he checks what skill sort does, it actually lets him move other skills to another screen, and other people are unable to view those skills. So basically this allows him to hide his skills from other people who are using appraisal on him to check his skills. Haru asks him if he's happy with the skills he obtained, and he comments how he is, as he thinks to himself how he probably has a lot of skills. It would be better to keep hidden so other people don't poke their noses and try to investigate more about it, because if he told them more, he would get insta-killed by the immortal Lordess, as she told him that if he tells anybody about his skills, he is gonna get pop clapped. Haru and Ichinosuke then hear somebody calling for them, and as they turn around, they see Joffrey and Alice crying in the distance, saying that they've got lost, asking Haru and Ichinosuke to take them to the teleporter so that they can go get help, and Ichinosuke lets them know how there's no need for help now, they've cleared all the lizards in the dungeon, as we see his face wanting that palm on it so he can face palm the hell out of these two idiots. A couple of moments ago, we see 4 of them gathering all the magic stones dropped by the lizards, and they're picking it up in a way as if they defeated the lizards, and this left Ichinosuke a little bit confused. Joffrey then looks at him and tells him that he did an amazing job, calling him a rookie, and Ichinosuke then asks the two of them if there was actually a subjugation quest for the massive spawning, meaning the massive lizard almost dragon monster. Ichinosuke also says how other adventurers that came to do this quest were all eaten, and Joffrey responds how to prevent other adventurers from stealing this quest for them. He actually took the request off of the board, and Alice is left absolutely in love with Joffrey's amazing intellect, as she calls him a true genius, and we see Ichinosuke disappointed yet again as he's thinking that they're gonna get in trouble because he stole the request off of the notice board in the Adventurers Guild. Haru then lets Joffrey know that for what he just did, which is removing the quest without permission, he has to pay a fine, and we see a dull expression on his face as he can't believe that that's actually a punishable offense, as we see Ichinosuke yet again thinking how Joffrey is a complete idiot. Now, as a little bit of time passes, we see Ichinosuke and Haru returning back to the town and going to the Adventurers Guild, where he found a merchant in the guild's quarters, as he says that he wants to sell all the magic stones and materials he gathered after slaying those lizards, and she says how it's perfectly fine and asks for his proof of an adventurer, which he doesn't have, if you bros remember, because he has a jobless profession and you can't be an adventurer without a profession. However, Haru came to the rescue as she comments how she would like to sell those items instead of him because she has an adventurer certificate proof, and Ichinosuke doesn't mind that at all. And while they're talking, the thug working for the nobleman who wanted to buy Haru off but Ichinosuke bought her before him approaches them, calling Ichinosuke so poor that he feels bad for his slave, who is Haru, because her master doesn't have enough money, and we see Haru is not too happy hearing this, but Ichinosuke calms her down as he starts petting her head and yelling at this thug, saying that besides insults, he has nothing smart to say, and telling him that he needs to stop insulting his Haru, and the thug is left kinda shocked and surprised, because two of them aren't acting like a master and a slave, but more like a couple, like their boyfriend and a girlfriend, and Ichinosuke then insults this man here, saying him that he has to be an idiot to only be able to say such idiotic things, which is to be expected of a nobleman's maid, and this makes the thug really angry at him as he yells that he will fight him for insulting his honor like that, and Ichinosuke isn't afraid of him as he tells him that he will fight him in that arena. Now we learn that when people step onto this arena, even if they're killed, it'll be treated as an accident and the other guy won't be punished, but there is also a punishment room in the back of the arena, as Joffrey and Alice comment how that room is basically their second home, and Ichinosuke tells them to stop interrupting him because he was just having an argument with his thug. The thug then bursts out in laughter, saying that he never expected a coward like him to challenge him to a fight in the arena, and he tells Ichinosuke that if he inspects his glass, he'll just start running away for his dear life. He comments how he'll get quite a handy reward for killing Ichinosuke from Mr. Orjiru, who was the nobleman who wanted to buy Haru first, and we actually see Haru not too happy hearing this, as she is concerned, worrying that Ichinosuke might get killed in this duel. And while she was thinking about all this, the merchant lady tells them that her money is ready and it's 32 senzu for all the materials they sold after defeating the lizards. We see Ichinosuke expressing gratitude for the money he received, and this thug approaching the merchant lady, letting her know to prepare the arena because he's about to murder this other adventurer there. To which she responds how Ichinosuke isn't an adventurer, but he gets close up in her face, saying that it's not a problem, confusing her a bit as he lets her know that he's gonna teach Ichinosuke the struggles of life and how he won't kill him. And we see Ichinosuke thinking how this guy is really talkative for somebody who acts like a macho man. And this thug actually thinks to himself that even if he kills Ichinosuke, he wouldn't be punished by the law, because if anything was to happen and somebody was to die, it's treated as an accident as long as it happened in the arena battleground. He then slams his fist on the table, yelling at the lady, asking in a threatening voice how there shouldn't be a problem in booking this fight, and we see her really scared